Thank you so much. First of all, I'd like to thank the Calaveras Trauma Consortium for inviting me to be here. It's been an absolutely wonderful day, and I hope to give you tools that you can take with you into your classrooms and that you can even use personally. So if you had an opportunity to go and take the resiliency quiz, I would encourage you to do that and then go to Slido and put the event code in 6083, and then we'll do a little bit of a word cloud to show some of the, you're going to put the number that you received on your resiliency quiz. And so again, going to 6083, and we'll just go ahead and go to the Slido word cloud up at the top. Yeah, if you click there, I have help. And so you're going to put in your number from the resiliency quiz. And but what I'd like to tell you about this is we often talk about your ACE score, and you've heard a lot today about our ACE score. And so you're going to put 6083 to get to the event, but you're going to put your number from the event code. So, or from the actual, instead of putting 6083, if you take the resiliency quiz, it's going to give you a score. And so that's the number that we're looking for. And so I'd like to take you a little bit through that. And if you want to go up to share, I think we're in the way of being able to click that. There you go, in present mode. It should give us a cloud. We're gonna see 683, okay, and there you go. So right now, 6083 is the number that's being shared most, but you would get a score between 0 and 80. So if you at another time want to go to that resiliency quiz, one of the things that we know is that our ACE score is important, but what's even more important is our resiliency number. And so that tells us how we're going to cope. When we focus on a child's ACE score and we don't go farther and really determine the resiliency code or the resiliency number, then we've missed an important piece of what we need to do for that child. All of us have gone through a trauma, and what separates us, and I've thought about this because I had significant trauma as a small child. Then in my early 20s, I found myself widowed from a horrific car accident and left with a toddler. So that really made me think when I then later went to work with some of the youth that I worked with that had actually committed violent crimes and had been tried for those crimes, because I really wanted to see what separated me, having been able to kind of work myself out of similar things, and those students. And it was really the resilience factor. And so that's why, as important as that ACE score is, it's critically important that we know where our students and where ourselves fall in our resiliency. If you had an 80 or higher, if you take the quiz, you're very resilient. If you're 65 to 80, you're better than most. If you're 50 to 65 in that number, then you've got a little bit of work to do. If you're 40 to 50, you have some struggles with resiliency. And if you're 40 or under, we really want you to get professional help to build those coping strategies. We know that if we can build the coping strategies and we can build the things that will open up those resilient zones that we all have, then we know that we can combat that ACE score. We can actually change the brain that Nadine Burke-Harris talked about, and so many other people have spoken of today, is really getting into that resilience zone and staying in that resilience zone of where we can, when things are thrown at us, as they often are, we're in a zone where we will react to it in a better and more healthy way. So again, if you have the opportunity to take that quiz now or later, that is great, but we'll continue. And we may show this again once the bubbles get up there at the end of the presentation. But at this point, we're going to go ahead and move on. Thank you, Maggie, for that wonderful introduction. I have had over 40 years in education. I know that I look like I'm 20, but truly I've been in the business for 40 years. And so with that, again, my passion has been how to serve. And I really believe that relationships are so incredibly important. And we can go to the next slide. I changed the title a little bit because the other was just much too long. And really, we want to talk about room to thrive. And it's really about relationships, and it's about words and that growth mindset that you've heard all day regarding the word yet. I want you to get into your vocabulary, and I want you to instill that word into the vocabulary of your children that you serve. When you think about the word yet and the power of yet, it takes self-doubt and it turns it into optimism. So if you just get yourself, when we talk about self-care from earlier, the session just before this, or you talk about how to help your students, when you hear a self-deprecating comment, if you could get them to insert yet, I can't do this yet, this doesn't work yet, I'm not good at this yet. You are beginning to model and train that growth mindset into the students that you serve. And again, moving on, why are relationships important? And you can, oh, I'm clicking, aren't I?
I can.
Okay. I'm maybe not clicking. Okay. What you can expect today is, again, the why and the relationships. We're going to talk about 5 key stress resilience skills. And then we're going to talk about opportunities for self-regulation and thriving in the classroom, because we really want to do is we want to normalize coping strategies. We don't want students or yourselves as educators or educational professionals in whatever realm you hold to be doing something because you need it when all of us need it. And so we want to normalize all the coping strategies that we can possibly do with our children. So that's, and then we'll have a little bit of time, hopefully, for Q&A. So again, sit back and thank you very much. Why are relationships important? We know all too well the barriers of achievement. We know lack of confidence. We know lack of skills. We know absenteeism. We know that focus and self-regulation are very difficult. And bridges to achievement are the safe spaces, or focusing on the task rather than the person. And we're going to talk about that more. Connections, which Brett Loring so beautifully spoke on earlier, and normalizing strategies for coping. Again, relationships, oh, can we go back? Sorry about that. Why are relationships so important? They make our classroom thrive. Relationships are actually the building blocks to achievement. We often think, and early on as I've gone to different districts and talked to different teachers, I don't have time for that morning meeting. I don't have time for this. I only have a 47-minute period. And my response back is, you don't have time not to. We know, and different programs and different companies and different mindsets have done different things with regard to, for example, responsive classroom, where they were one of the first big programs to instill the morning meeting. And many people have morning meetings. They also, their mantra is to not start teaching curriculum for the first 6 weeks of school. And so we see many strategies like that. And the reason those strategies work is because if we take the time to build the relationships, then our work as educators will become so much easier down the road because you have that relationship. We know that when we connect with relationships, it builds confidence. We have students come to school. We had a program that we instilled in my last district where it was 5 steps. And the 5 steps were for students and adults. We found that we would walk past one another as colleagues and not address them. We found that with our children as well. So we instituted 5 steps, and all it was when you are 5 steps away from another person, you must look them in their eye and say hello and say that you were glad to see them today. That was it. If you knew their name, all the better. If you didn't, you still could not use that as an excuse. If you were 5 steps away, you had to address them. And I had a young man that was having some absenteeism, and all of a sudden it turned around. And I was talking with him and I said, why, what's the difference? And he said, I don't want the cafeteria. This was a cafeteria worker. Her name was Betsy. I don't want her to not see me because she wouldn't have anyone to say hello to. And so he started to come to school just for that reason, just for that relationship. So we know that research tells us that relationships are very important. Dr. Luther out of Arizona State University has studied this for 30 years. And she talks about the fundamental reason that people can bridge that achievement is through relationships. Dr. Hattie, most of you are familiar with his work as a leading educational researcher for evidence-based practices, finds that relationships with teachers have a greater impact than class size, socioeconomic status, professional development. Angela Myers talks about relationships that require teachers to show a genuine care for students, both as a learner and as a person. We need warmth, which is the care to accept students for who they are. We need empathy to understand how your students think and feel. And we need time to be physically and mentally present. We need that for one another, and we need that extraordinarily for our students. Research has shown the 2 things that teachers can do to create excellent, solid teacher and student relationships is to care about the learner and the learning. We need to press our students to excel beyond their perceived potential. But we won't truly understand that, and we won't be able to press them beyond their potential if we don't have a relationship with them. Kids don't perform for teachers that they don't perceive as truly seeing them as individuals and truly understanding and having an empathy for them. So I would invite you to, again, think about the students that you've had. First, think about yourself as a child, and it's come through all through the day, is that, and through the mini lessons that we saw at lunch, it's the staff, whether it's people in our cafeteria, whether it's people in our custodial or bus transportation, or in our classrooms, that we know that we can combat our ACEs scores and that we can build our resiliency scores with relationships. So again, you're going to hear it over and over and over again because of the importance. But let's talk about the 5 keys to stress resilience. First of all, we can think of this as a relationship between our body and our experiences. It is critical for building resilience for students that are overcoming trauma. But it's also just as effective for students that have any kind of regulation difficulty, whether it be ADHD or being somewhere on the spectrum, or just having a particularly off day. We know that best practices, whether it's social emotional practices, mental health practices, or academic best practices, we know that when they are strong, they not only help those that were trying to rise up from a lower degree, but it just accelerates the learning and the strengthening of an individual that may not be struggling as some of the students that we've talked about in terms of where they're at and where they're struggling. So again, the 5 are self-awareness, which this is just a foundational skill. And it is your physical and emotional, those are your physical and emotional responses. And you can go to the next one, I guess. Thank you. Attention is being present. And we talked a lot about being present in several of the earlier panels and discussion, and then letting go, the physical removing of the tension, flipping our brain, and thinking about how we do that through meditation or through breathing or through mindfulness activities, but the physical release of tension. And then the mental, letting go mentally, developing a growth mindset, again, giving kids the tool. One of the hardest things about that I first saw when I went to Hoopa, which is a reservation, and I was so moved by one of our earlier presenters that grew up in Hoopa, and I could really, everything that she said resonated, because the hardest thing that I found after working so many years with students that had been through the court system and who had been in some horrific situations. When I came to the reservation, one of the things that struck me was that many of our students didn't see them beyond their present circumstances. They couldn't imagine life in a different way. And so without that imagination, and without that growth mindset, it became very difficult for them to see and to have any hope for what it was going to be like at 19 or 20 or 25. And so that's why this is critical, is and that relationship of having a true empathy for students and helping them develop that growth mindset, which goes back to the earlier evidence that we talked about, is that it has to be genuine. Kids know if you're not genuine. They know if you're faking it, if you will. That's not to say, and I do tell teachers that have significant biases, you have to fake it until you make it, because the kid may not believe it, but if you fake it long enough, you're going to destroy some of your own biases. So please, if you can't, if you just can't love that kid, and we've all been there, fake it till you make it, because eventually the kid may never buy in that you loved him, but you will change and you will have a different mindset and a different growth. So again, and then last, the 5th thing, which is accessing and sustaining positive motion. Look for the silver linings. We've talked about many times the silver linings in COVID, and there are some, as hard as it is and as scary as it is. I know that in my 20 plus years of being an administrator, having the weight of not only a child's education, but a child and a family's health in my hands based on the decisions was extraordinarily difficult. And it was something that I had to spend a lot of time with. And so I had to really focus on those silver linings. What are the silver linings? And I can tell you, nothing makes me happier than when I hear a teacher exuberant and actually giddish about how they've accomplished something technologically when they thought that they were the worst. And so again, looking for those silver linings. Parents, even though they're pulling their hair out and we're expecting so much, and they are showing up and showing out for their kids in ways that we never imagined. The silver lining is they have been forced to have that time in some ways, even though it's caused some other stressors in their lives. It has also been a silver lining because they've got to know their child in a different way. So again, looking for those silver linings. So again, I'm going to give you some very easy ways. We already talked about the 5 steps, and I would encourage you to do that. But now I'm going to teach you 2 things that we used for self-regulation. And for the administrators in the audience, I would invite you to start every staff meeting with signing the contract. Signing the contract comes, we were part of the Kennedy, well, Hoopa L is still part of Turnaround Arts Foundation. And so we were able to learn skills that use the arts, and we've had some of those activities today with drumming and so on and so forth. But we were able to use some and learn some skills through the Actors Toolbox. And there is in the resources section of the slides, you have some places where you can get more information on the Actors Toolbox. But signing the contract is part of the Actors Toolbox and part of Acting Right. And it's a way to kind of set the stage for classroom climate. And also it helps with regulation. And you can stop and sign the contract whenever you kind of see your class going as a whole. And again, going back to that need to normalize coping strategies, this assists you with doing that. And we really talk about and have students become aware of their voice, their body control, their imagination, and concentration, and their cooperation. So I'm going to teach you how to do signing the contract. We'll go through it a couple of times. If you are in the presence of others, I would invite you to, with socially distanced or with your mask, I would invite you to get somewhat close so that you can feel, usually it's a circle. And I actually am going to invite, I have a couple of people here, I'm going to invite them to be a part of this because I might as well use them and you'll get a full effect. So we're going to maybe go back. Can you see us back here, I think? So I'm going to invite Karina and Lori and Jeff, if you'd like to be a part of this. I'm going to go through. And I don't know if you can all see us, but they had no idea that they were going to get to do this. So, and I am not going to wear my mask just because I don't think you'll be able to hear me as well. But we're going to get set up. So again, we're talking about voice, body control, imagination, concentration, and cooperation. And you can do this at the beginning of your day. It sets the tone in your classroom. But we would have teachers that if you were doing a science experiment, for example, and it was starting to get a little loud and a little crazy and it was beyond your comfort zone, you could say, guys, let's sign the contract again, just to remember our voice and our body control. If you started to see a group in a small small reading group or in a small achievement group that you had in small groups, you could, again, stop and invite people if they were starting to get off task and have regulation issues. If you saw a particular student that is severely ADHD, having a really hard time, instead of calling that individual student out, you could actually, as a whole class, say, hey, let's as a class get balanced again and let's sign the contract so we can help one another. So again, you can utilize it in many different ways. So what you're going to do is I want you to take just a really deep breath before we start. Okay, then we're going to reach down to the ground and just reach to your feet, and I'm going to talk you through it. Friends, we're going to sign the contract today. We're going to make sure that we have control of our body, that we're focused, that we're balanced. So we're reaching down through the ground so that we can control our legs. And we know that we need to, in our classroom, have calm legs and calm bodies so that we can be safe. And we're just going to bring our hands slowly up to our knees. We're going to continually, slowly go up to our waist and to our belly. We're going to hold our hands right here. And we're going to take a deep breath because we are in control of our hands and our bodies and our legs. Now we're going to keep going back up, and we're going to stop at our neck. And we're in control of our mouth and the sounds and how loud we are. And we're going to balance it for the space that we're in, and we're going to help our friends do the same. Then we're going to come up to our eyes. I want everybody to close their eyes for a moment. And I want you to imagine that place that you go to that is the best place you've ever been. I want you to think of that place. Because if learning gets hard today, I want you to close your eyes and I want you to think of that place and know that you're okay. And that this place where we learn can be just as safe and relaxing as we help each other, as that place that you have in your mind. Hold it for a minute, think about it. And I want you to slowly open your eyes, and I want you to extend your hand straight to an object, and I want you to pay attention to the objects that's between, any object that you have. And we're in control of our body, friends, in our classroom. So I want you to hold this for 1 whole minute, and you can do it. We're going to hold it, look at that place, and think about how you're in control of your body. Friends, you are doing an excellent job. We have about 20 more seconds. Again, you are in control of your body. You're in control of your mind and your imagination and your creativity. Your control of your learning and how well you do today. And with that, we need the help of others. So we are going to extend our hands to help our friends in the classroom. And normally we would be shoulder to shoulder if we weren't COVID, and holding on to one another. And friends, we're going to make the commitment to learn together and to help one another be in a place where we can be in control of our body and have balanced emotions and a focused mind. Okay, and we are done. That is as easy as it is for signing the contract. And so again, just to go through those steps, we start down and you talk them through it. You go up, you take a deep breath from your diaphragm. You stop to remind them to control the loudness of their voice, to have those calm voices that are, and those quieter voices, because we're in a learning environment. Then you go to that imagination and that visualization place, and then you really work on that focus. Occasionally, and you don't want to do it the first couple times, but if one of my friends here had a hard time and dropped their hands before, we would start the whole process over again, encouraging until we could all sign the contract. So it's important. This is one of those things where it's all or nothing, in terms of you really want kids to commit and you really want them to understand how much they are in control, and then give major praise when they've accomplished it. So again, you can do this all throughout the day. You can do it when you are being triggered and your pet peeves or whatever the issue is. I was I tended to have a more quiet classroom. And so when I went into really, really busy classrooms, I had to really balance that out. And if my class would come in kind of from one of those really busy classrooms and they would try and mimic that, we had to really stop, just because I knew that that was something that I had an issue with. So I had to explain that and be honest with my kids and give them a way to have that coping. Again, this is wonderful if you see one or two students that, regardless of what their issue is, whether it's trauma, whether it is an organic issue, you want to sign the contract and get everybody going as a kind of a preventative measure instead of waiting or pointing that kid out. Is just everybody, it's a good reminder to get everybody back focused. It's a brain break in many times, so, and it's also a body break. So that is signing the contract, and we'll be able to ask questions. And then the next one is tapping. And tapping is something that we do that is, it is emotional freedom technique. And tapping is what gives us something, again, to normalize. If you, I know that my brother has severe ADHD, and I didn't realize until I was much older that my parents actually taught him to shake his leg constantly, because that was, you know, socially appropriate to do. And it kept him, you know, it kept all that motor movement happening. So this is something, tapping is something that we can do for ourselves. And it's something that we can teach our children. And I do have a video that I want to show before we get into tapping, but these guys were wonderful with helping our, and I can sit to do tapping, we can sit to do tapping, but I do need to put on our, we gotta just switch things up a little bit and share my screen. And I have a quick little video that is embedded in our presentation. Yes, and it is that bottom one. Perfect. Hopefully there's no, okay. You good? Yeah. And if we present it, hit present mode. There we go.
When we tap on these endpoints of our body, these meridian endpoints, while focusing on the stress, the challenge, whatever's going on in our lives that we're trying to overcome, we actually send a calming signal.
They're just weighed down with some of this emotional stress that they can't be open to learning new things.
As they're tapping, they say very positive phrases to themselves. Things such as, I am lovable, I am smart, I'm intelligent, people enjoy being around me. And they're telling themselves these kinds of things to kind of program that language in their head that they're going to be walking around with all day long.
Change the dynamics of my classroom. It's helped me become a better teacher. When our students come through the door, we need to focus on the whole child. We need to focus on the academics, as we always have. But we also need to definitely make sure that we're paying attention to the emotional, the social emotional learning piece of our students.
It's very valuable. I'm really grateful for having it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. helping me out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so tapping again is kind of acupuncture without needles that can happen anywhere at any time. So I want to.
You can't teach an
Oh.
old dog new tricks. So
There we go. So tapping again is again that activity that we can normalize, a coping strategy that we can all use, and it has an amazing impact. If we could go to the next slide. This kind of, it gives you a little bit, and we're going to actually go through this, and I would again invite my friends in the room to do it as well. But what you're basically going to do, and I'm going to scoot back just a little bit, is again, I'm going to give you a script, and we'll go through this a couple of times, but I would really invite you wherever you're at to do this. I usually just put my hand on my heart and on my belly, and I take in a deep breath and repeat it. That's how we start. And now you begin with tapping the side of your hand, and you can just use 2 fingers right like this. I don't know if you can, thank you, Karina, because we can see you. So, so you're just gonna tap like this, and you can have any kind of script that you want. If we knew something about Karina and something was bothering her today, then we could address that specifically.
My feet are killing me because
oh,
I'm wearing heels.
Okay, her feet are killing her. So we would say, even though my feet are killing me, so go ahead.
Even though my feet are killing me,
I know that my service today with this conference was awesome.
I know my service today with this conference was awesome.
Good job. Okay. Even though my feet are killing me, I know my work at this conference was awesome. Go ahead.
Even though my feet are killing me, I know my work at this conference was awesome.
We're going to do the same thing with her head. Even though my feet are killing me, I know my work at this conference was awesome.
Even though my feet are killing me, I know my work at this conference was awesome.
Okay, now into our eyebrows. Even though my feet are killing me, I know my work at this conference was awesome.
Even though my feet are killing me, I know my work at this conference was awesome.
She's going to do it again at the side. Even though my feet are killing me, I know my work at this conference was awesome.
Even though my feet are killing me, I know my work at this conference was awesome.
Even though, and she's going to go under her cheeks. Even though my feet are killing me, I know my work at this conference was awesome.
Even though my feet are killing me, I know my work at this conference was awesome.
Under her nose, even though. And you can do it with 2 hands or 1. This one gets a little tricky. I usually just do the 2 fingers. Even though my feet are killing me, my work at this conference was awesome.
Even though my feet are killing me, I know my work at this conference was awesome.
Excellent. Now right at your collarbone. Even though my feet are killing me, I know my work at this conference was awesome.
Even though my feet are killing me, I know my work at this conference was awesome.
And then the last one right here under your armpits or right at your armpits. Even though my feet are killing me, I know that my work at this conference was awesome.
Even though my feet are killing me, I know my work at this conference was awesome.
Then you give yourself a hug and you take 3 deep breaths. Okay, so how are your feet feeling?
I'm sitting down now, so they are better.
Okay, honesty, I love it.
It could be the tapping.
It probably is you're sitting down. So if you continue to do that, you can do, and we'll go through it again. So again, I want you to take your deep breath. And you could start with, and again, you're going to tap here at your side of your hand. And you could say, and you could start it in the morning as a classroom meeting, and you could, and I won't go through, I'll change the script with each part that we go through, but you could say, even though I'm worried today about my parents while I'm at school, I know that I'm okay. So you could do something like that if you knew it was a particular issue. If you wanted a whole class thing and you wanted to give a script for your whole class, it could be, today we are going to have a great day, even though we have to have a rainy day recess. And you would continue to go to the pressure points that, even though I know that we're going to have a great day, even though it's a rainy day recess, because we know that at least in elementary schools, rainy day recesses are crazy for everybody. Teachers may need to do this on rainy day recess as well. Okay, you might want to talk about if you have a special presenter coming into your classroom, and so you can really use any script. I'm going to help my friends listen to the guest speaker that we have coming into our class, and you go through the whole tapping situation until you go. We do this a lot for, if I don't know if in your elementary school you sit on the wall, but we had sitting on the wall, which was excruciating for the student and for the playground monitors. So they actually did tapping for the behavior. So I push down Corrine, so I have to say that I'm sorry and she'll forgive me. And you can just go through the different things that and then you go under the nose, the chin, the collarbone, the armpits. So again, you can do it with individuals, or you can do it with whole group when you want whole group behavior, so that we all can again help. And you want to encourage people. I'm feeling nervous about my test, but I know that I'm going to be okay. Reading is hard, but I know that I'm going to, that the small group will help me. You give those scripts for tapping, and then practice them, making sure that you do that deep breath at the beginning. Then you go head, eyebrows, sides of eyes, temples, cheekbones, under the nose, chin, collarbone, armpits, and then hug. So that is tapping, and I would encourage you to use it both whole group and also with with an individual, for an individual issue that you may see a child going through. I have provided some resources for further learning about these two things, or just resiliency in classrooms and how to help children. A couple of books that didn't get on there, I would highly recommend people read Tori Hayden if you just want to refresh yourself in why you went into education and why it's so important to have relationships. So with that, I very much appreciate your time and being here, and I would like to invite any questions that you may have that I might be able to answer or get to an answer for you.
Thank you, Paula. We're having a little bit of a technical difficulty on my, they're not seeing what we're seeing. They can still see us, but so it looks like Mary Howell was wondering, have any teachers out there used the signing the contract online with students, and with what results?
I have not used it with students, Mary, but I can tell you that I used it with my staff. I'm new to the county and new to this position, and at our opening staff meeting, I did use it. And as I said, when I was a principal, I used it with every staff. I opened every staff meeting with signing the contract with adults, and I've only used it online that one time.
Thanks. Any other questions for our presenter? As we're waiting, I just want to remind people that after our presentation today, please go back to the morning Zoom link. We will have a wrap up, and also please fill out the post survey. If you're joining as an in-service day, that will be a requirement for your attendance. I'm not seeing any other questions. Are you over there, Jeff? Are you seeing any other questions?
Anonymous attendee just said, remind us when and where you've used tapping, anytime specific to one student?
Where I've used it most is in, for example, morning meetings, and when you want to bring your class together again to establish a class culture that it's okay, you want to give them a physical activity or a physical release that you want to teach your students. So you would start out teaching, you can teach individual students, but I started out teaching it as a classroom culture is part of my morning meeting. So again, I would normalize, it's a coping strategy that we can use at any time, at any place. It's not something that looks way crazy that, I find myself that when I am going into a meeting, or if I'm going into a situation where I'm a little uncertain, I will tap and give myself those positive affirmations. And so again, it's something that you can use at any time, any place. When you have road rage in the car, and you want to again normalize that for students. And so starting it out as a classroom culture kind of activity where you're doing a positive affirmation, and then encouraging kids. I see you're having a really hard time with that practice that we're doing. You might want to take a moment and tap and remind yourself that you are a learner, for example. And again, I've used it for students sitting on the wall because they were being aggressive on the playground, helping them remember. And you can either help them come up with a script, and that once you are well established, you can invite them to come up with their script so that it hooks them even more, or you can provide the script for them, similar to what I did with Corrine, where you kind of find out what is the most pressing issue. If I'm seeing that she is distressed in any way because I have a relationship with her, I can notice things that may clue me into the fact that she is distressed. And so you can help her or give her that script to take at any time so that she can go through that.
Great. Jeff, any other questions you're seeing over there?
Just got a fresh one that came in actually. Is there a particular age group of students for the tapping, or does it work with all ages?
I have not done it personally with folks under a TK classroom, but I do know that there are practitioners that use it with children in preschool. And again, this is also something that you can teach. It's a wonderful parent tool when they are particularly stressed and about something. It also, if they start tapping because they might not have the coping skills. So it's also something that can be, not only in the classroom, but also can be a skill that an entire family uses. And you can take it to that place. But I do know practitioners that have used it in early education. But I have not personally used it that young.
We have one more question here. How do you normalize this? I imagine our high school students really mocking it to some degree, but can fathom it being really helpful.
Yeah. Again, I think it's how you present it. And I think that when I first introduced it in with junior high kids, there was some of that, and you just persevered through it, just like anything else. I mean, the first time that you make, when you talk about puberty, or, in third or fourth grade, every time you say, but there, you get a reaction. And so, and there's all age groups and developmental groups that are going to have a difficult time at first. But again, if you make that, it is something that you're going to do, and you're going to do it in a safe way. And again, you're going to probably have a person, if a person just won't give up as far as mocking it, you're going to have a personal conversation, and you may want to do some other things with that individual, especially if, you know, they're junior high or high school, and ask them to just sit quietly. They don't have to actually participate in the tapping, but again, you want it to be something that's available to all students. And so it's the same would happen. And we actually, when we started mindfulness and meditation and the quiet time that you've seen in a couple of other presentations, you had some of those same kinds of behaviors. And eventually, our students often spoke and were the people that turned other students around because they relied on it. And so they actually became advocates for themselves to have a safe space. And so that's kind of how you get around it. But again, if you really embrace it, and you're authentic in how you embrace it, and you again just are steadfast, then it becomes a normalized behavior. And the younger that you can start, obviously, if we start this with our kindergartners and they grow up through, then it becomes a normalized behavior. But even for those people that are starting, that are junior high or middle school or high school teachers, I would certainly invite you to use it. And I would definitely make that kind of blanket statement before you start. This may be weird to you, and that's okay. If you would just sit quietly while everybody else or whoever wants to participate in it does it, then set that classroom culture.
Any other questions, Jeff?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Paula.
Yes,
and thank you to all of our participants on the educator track today.